Welcome to Grace versus Helen. Very exciting deep bracket game. Both players are new to chess, brand new to chess. Should be a wild, exciting game. We get a very interesting opening that I don't know the name of. I guess this is the Polish opening. I'm not even sure the point of it. I think there's some crazy ideas. I mean, I guess you get access to your bishop right away. If black plays a normal developing move, this pawn can be targeted, and I'm not sure if that's the intent or not. But we don't see the normal opening. I would expect bishop b2 here. The point of making the early hole in the camp is just to get access to this diagonal, prevent some I don't know, prevent some more of the. You know what? The Polish opening's not my opening. I don't know it. Maybe these players do. Maybe it's just a move. Seems like it's just a move, but that's all good. Okay, this again, kind of the idea I think is you get early access for your bishop to get out. Black takes control of the center, sort of playing a French-style response to this. Although in this case, white hasn't put any challenges to the center, so black could even mix it up just by playing two pawns to the center right away, taking control of the center early. Grace develops a knight, and Helen grabs the pawn. Seems like a free pawn. It's up to the opponent to prove that it's not. In this case, you might just want to play a5 here and just defend the bishop. Dropping back makes a lot of sense as well. And the only thing you have to watch now is that this bishop is the only guard of this pawn. So if it were to leave, it would fall to the rook. So something to keep an eye on. Both players developing, getting some pieces out. Attack on the bishop here. Dropping back is probably going to capture it, but this could be good for black, developing this, opening up the file for this rook. So I don't even mind dropping back there. Helen takes it out of the line of fire, and just says to the knight, like, why are you on the side of the board? And suddenly, now that it's not able to trade off, looks kind of silly there. We get bishop development, castles. Really strong fundamentals here from both players. Haven't dropped any pieces. We got reasonable moves in the starting. Not an opening that I know, but really great play from both sides here. This move I don't like as much because I think the rook can just capture it. But Grace here gives her opponent a lot of respect, doesn't capture the piece. And that gives Helen time to reinforce it and guard it. And now the rook can't grab the piece. Even though it's attacked twice and only defended once, it's the problem is you have to give up a high value piece for a low value pawn, and you don't want to make that exchange. So Grace gets aggressive here with bringing the knight in, but then Helen just kicks it right back out. And I think that's the right response there, is you don't want to let the opponent's pieces sit close to your king, because if you give them enough time, they'll come up with something. Great developing move. Challenging the center. And also this move restricts the movement of the knight. Great move. You have to be thinking, what does my opponent want, and how can I stop it? And this move stops the free range of the knight. Developing the last bishop, great fundamentals here. Now I probably want to see from Helen getting a rook onto the b file and maybe pushing this pawn, opening up the diagonal of the bishop and making this bishop a lot stronger. This is a great spot for the knight, challenging this guy. Rook attacking the bishop, but the rook can't guard both at the same time. So if the knight takes on this square, if regardless of which piece the rook takes, it's still even. Chooses to defend the bishop. Rook moves back. And now we get the pawn forward, and the pawn forward is defended by the bishop. So, I like this. It's probably just forcing this trade, which I'm not sure Black wants that trade. But it works out in her favor because the pawn move changed the board, and now it attacks the f3 knight. And I think Grace didn't notice that the board had changed and the knight was under attack. But Helen doesn't notice either, and now the piece is just going to stay there until somebody notices. Grace notices, and the opportunity's closed. Window's closed. Opportunity's gone. Knight moves. And although it moves to a square where it doesn't have much future, it does have a one square where it can go to and kind of redirect, get back into the game. Hanging pawn gets snapped up. That brings Helen up 2 pawns. And we have an interesting move here. Maybe starting a kingside attack. This is a risky move because the dark squares around the king are now exposed, and we still have a dark squared bishop on the board, so we might actually see that become useful. I'm also looking at like this move that attacks both the queen, and the rook, and while it's defended by 2 pieces, you want to notice these things right away because the board can change quickly and those pieces can move. Okay, a mirroring move on the other side, connecting all the pawns here. But the one thing I'd say about this is it undefends the g6 square. So now it kind of gives the knight a home to hop into this square, and that could be a little bit annoying. Maybe even jumping in, to one of these other squares, and Grace takes advantage right away. And that's exactly what happened. The knight should have captured here. Oh, but actually there's some complications. So the problem is the knight's not defended. So white now with this pawn move, white can capture this knight for free. And the problem with black capturing it though was that one of the pawns recaptures and then forks the rook and the bishop. So very tricky. You have to capture it with the bishop. Then when the pawn recaptures, the rook can move out of the way. And that's just going to cost Helen the knight. So we move the bishop out of the way, keep that out of danger. Lining up the rook with the king, always a good idea. First thing you should see here is that this pins this pawn, and now the pawn that it defends is potentially a target. It at the moment doesn't work because the rook is defending that as well, but it's something you got to check. I know we have a rook sacrifice here on the pawn, and I think this is a mistake. If white wanted to open up the position, it should have been a pawn capture here, and then pawn takes, and then rook can consider taking. But you got to see the bishop across the board is still covering that square, and rook takes doesn't work at all just because the pawn can take the rook, and now bishop could capture the pawn here. But instead we have a rook sacrifice, and that didn't work either because the pawn could capture it. So we got dueling rook sacrifices on both sides of the board here, but this sacrifice wasn't accepted, and instead we get the loss of the bishop. Rook comes up to defend this pawn. And now something like bishop captures and queen here starts to put a lot of pressure on the king. So we see the bishop capture, and And it's at this point that Grace ran out of time, it looks, and the first game goes to Helen. Okay, let's hop over to game two. Game two, the rematch. Helen starts with the D pawn, the queen pawn, possibly going for a London setup, but this this G5 move is may actually be sort of a anti-London. You can't put the bishop out to the square that you normally put it to. You can capture it though, so maybe that's the right move. But we missed that opportunity and instead develop a knight. Again, these pawns on light squares have good control of the light squares around them, but they leave holes with the dark squares where the other pieces can fit into. Bishop captures now on the second chance and drops back. Couldn't capture the knight because it was defended. Queen develops, attacking the knight, but the knight's also defended. Now the bishop's under attack, bishop moves back, and we've got pawn moves forward. And now this pawn's not defended, probably just knight captures is the best here. Throws in a check, very interesting check to the king. Maybe pawn or bishop defends, attacking the queen back, so the queen's now got to move, but captures the other pawn. Offering a queen trade here. Grace is saying, I don't like your queen so close to my camp, why don't we trade queens? Now if you're the attacking player, you generally don't want to trade, so you might instead consider a move like queen takes d5 here, which threatens to win the rook as well. Also keeps pressure on the bishop, or on the knight, but it's defended by the bishop. And Helen sees it, very, very strong. And then we have another rook sacrifice, seems to be the theme of these games. Now, probably the best move is just to capture this with the knight. Don't like capturing with the pawn because it gives the queen access to the full diagonal here. It's not much that black can do with it at this point, but it is scary, and moving the queen to capture this rook works, but the problem with that is I feel like you're letting black off the hook with this free pawn, and I don't know. I don't like this one as much. Bishop goes down, rook goes down, so that's a rook for a bishop and a pawn. Not a great trade, but could have worked out worse, I think. And now the queen needs to be careful not to get trapped in the corner. A move like bishop here makes it very uncomfortable. Fortunately, white still has a way out, but maybe black could try to play the queen here first, and if white's not fast getting out of there, the bishop second does indeed trap the queen in the corner and wins the queen. So it's a tricky spot to be in. White wisely captures the pawn and makes a lot more escape room. And black develops a bishop. This is good. Good principle. If you're down in material, you want to have as many active pieces as possible. Just this last move comes with tempo of hitting the queen, so it's sort of like a free move. Definitely, if you want to make a comeback, you need to have as many pieces active as possible. And white has been very active with the queen, but doesn't have a lot of development. Yeah, so trading down is probably not advised because you're already down in material. White here is up 11 points at this point, so trading down just brings you closer to the end of the game. That loss of the knight now is going to limit how much counterplay black can get. This is a good move, taking away some of the squares of the knight. Now the knight doesn't have a lot of spaces it can move to. Rook does find a good one though. Knight develops with tempo. Queen moves. Knight moves again with tempo, revealing the attack from the bishop on the queen. Maybe queen could have picked a better square. And Helen doesn't see it, which drops the queen and yeah, maybe turns this game around. Pawn moves, and that's a free pawn, but it doesn't get picked up. And now it's defended, so it's not free anymore. Another pawn falls, attacking the knight. Knight moves. Queen comes in with an attack, and suddenly Grace is on the attack with a fairly strong attack here. The lack of development of White's pieces now is really going to hurt, whereas Black doesn't have that problem. Pieces can come in and cause some damage, so it's going to be hard to defend here. The only catch is Grace has got a minute and a half to figure this attack out and pull it off. So now Queen d4, bringing the queen into here is probably the strongest, defending the bishop in the process. And yeah, okay, I like this move. The pawns and the bishop are working together here to cover a lot of squares. The queen is covered off these squares. Can't go to this one. This leaves White with only one move. If you can find a follow-up to this, this could be game over. This doesn't quite work because you undefend this square. But I bet if you play queen here first and then push the pawn, you have mate. So that's not it. And this check is devastating. The problem being is that the king needs to move out of the way. Can't really block because you just take it. And once the king moves out of the way, the rook's going to gobble the queen here. And yeah, that's going to be it. Grace only had 7 seconds to figure this out, and it's not enough time to get out of this. At this point, the queen's going down, and what else are you going to do? Came close to the mate, but just didn't quite get it. Really needed to see queen here, and then this check here. Might not have been over because takes, king still gets to move, but it would have been close. All right, and with that means Helen is our round winner. So let's take a look at our board. Helen versus Grace. We got 2 wins with Helen. So well played. All right. See you next time.